For decades, councils have hosted sister city representatives from across the world and in exchange jet-setted overseas to visit their international counterparts. But the Minister for Local Government says he has no idea what the relevance or value of such trips have to the local community and believes the cost should be justified to ratepayers.
I would like to see councils drop sister city relationships overseas and concentrate within our own backyard, considering the problems we've got with finances.
The Mayor of Lake Macquarie says they have a modest investment in the Sister City program, adding that it's of great educational benefit for students. He also defended local councils, saying trips, especially those for conferences, are valuable for staff and councillors.
It's very important that councillors do see what's happening. They do participate in conferences and continue to expand their educational, their professional development, if you like.
Port Stephens tops the list with $56,900 spent on councillors' travel and expenses. Newcastle City Council was next with $39,000, while Cessnock and Lake Macquarie both spent around $20,000 last financial year on domestic and international trips for their councillors and mayor. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The provisional road toll for the Pacific Highway between Hexham and the Queensland border reached 25 last year, down 8 from 2005.
It's very pleasing to see that it's down from 33 in 2005 to 25 for the same period in 2006, and this is an excellent result.
Police attribute the reduction to highway improvement works, with 254 kilometres of the road now upgraded to dual carriageway between Hexham and the Queensland border. But the cost of bringing down the death toll certainly hasn't come cheap, with the state and federal governments spending $2.3 billion upgrading the highway to dual carriageway between 1996 and 2005, and allocating a further $1.3 billion to the project over the next 3 years. The Roads and Traffic Authority estimates it will cost somewhere between $8 and $10 billion to complete the upgrade. Police say it's well worth the cost.
Most definitely, it's improving the roads, it's improving the conditions for drivers.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Dozens of dogs have been left crying out for some love and a good home after being abandoned by their owners when they leave rented premises. According to the RSPCA, over the past 12 months, there's been an alarming increase in the number of pets given up because they're not allowed in many rental properties.
Anyone who's renting really needs to look into that before they even get a pet in the first place, because it's a lifetime commitment, not a 6-month or 12-month lease.
And it's not just dogs that are being evicted from families and left without homes. The RSPCA says pet owners should put in more effort to retain their animals if they plan on moving.
If they've got a pet and they're renting and they're looking to move, they really need to do some homework in trying to find a place that will accept the pets. Sometimes the lease will say no pets, but if they actually approach a real estate agent or the landlord, they may make concessions.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Back to work at his day job today. It was moonlighting last night for New South Wales and cricket that Andrew Johns was literally in the middle of things. Facing one ball, he and Simon Kadich were chasing 13 runs off the last over to win, but the Blues captain took strike and refused to take singles, leaving the crowd more than a little annoyed they didn't see more. In the light of day, Johns was a little surprised at all the fuss.
It was for charity, really, and I never confess to being a Don Bradman or a Shane Warne, but it was good fun to get out there.
He certainly livened things up in the field. And when given the ball late in South Australia's innings, he almost had a wicket. Johns' none for 9, hardly about to worry Australian selectors though. But his involvement still rated a big success from cricket's point of view.
It's very hit and giggle, and they say it's about sports entertainment, and that's what it was. You saw a lot of young families there at the game yesterday, and I doubt they'd go to a 4-day game. But
as for that last over though,
Cow Corner was ready. They would have went straight over the fence.
the All Blacks are so serious about winning this year's Rugby World Cup that they're resting 22 players from the Super 14 competition under a bold plan to have them conditioned for the big one. It still means training though, and for scrum half Piri Weepu, a week with Andrew Johns.
The way he sort of reads the defence line and carries the ball in two hands, sort of things like that, and the way he puts players into holes.
With a strong league background, the 23-year-old Wellington star isn't ruling out a switch to the rival code down the track, but for now the focus is the World Cup and picking Johns' football mind.
Go have a look at some of the games that he's played in and have a look and see what he was asking, like little questions about what he was thinking and things like that.
The visit is the brainchild of Knights coach Brian Smith and his Kiwi namesake Wayne Smith, who assists with the All Blacks, with Weepu sure to offer the Knights a thing or two as well.
Even for a great player like Andrew, who's always looking for a new toy to play with and a new angle to come at, that intrigues him and inspires him.
As for a future at Newcastle,
he's built like a league halfback, and to be honest, there's not many going around. So, if he's decided to change, I'm sure that if he one club over this way, I'd be interested in him.
only last week all the Jets were worried about was securing 4th place. Now the goalposts have shifted a little. Sydney's loss means Newcastle is back within reach of the Premiers.
There's 2 points now in between us and Sydney, and I think even second to a degree is not out of the realms of possibility. If you get 2 wins, I think we'd go very, very close.
That starts this weekend against Perth, the only team the Jets are yet to take a competition point off this season. And after a troubled journey west last time, no stone is being left unturned to ensure preparation is pinpoint to take all 3 points.
Fate's in our hand now, so it's all up to us now. So we've put ourselves back in there in the great position that we are, and we've just got to take it with both hands now.
Suspended midfielder Stu Mishalik won't be heading west, and the coach is leaning towards a straight replacement to save major disruption.
You don't want to mess too much with the team. It's the stability of how we've played and what we've done has basically served us quite well to get us in the position we are.
Out recently with a quad muscle strain, captain Paul Ocon was showing signs he could also be available for the game.
It certainly wasn't all smooth sailing for Peter Debnam today, who spent the morning with Nelson Bay fishermen discussing the Port Stephens to Great Lakes Marine Park.
Well, the Marine Park is just the Labor Party's way of extending the bureaucracy to the water, and that's what they're doing. They're undermining the lifestyle of everybody who chooses to live around the water.
Fishing groups welcomed his visit and tough stance on the marine park.
They guaranteed to remove all the sanctuary zones from the Port Stephens, Cape Byron and Bateman's Bay Marine Park within the first 12 months of them in office.
Others weren't so accommodating, with debate erupting as soon as he got off the boat, with Labor candidate Jim Arnman criticising the state opposition's plan to axe 20,000 public sector jobs.
Jim is fighting for more Sydney bureaucrats. Well,
That
Jim, good on you.
That is absolute rubbish. That is absolute rubbish.
A small group of residents also voiced their concerns over the planned job cuts. The protesters assisting Mr Debnam's hasty exit from the bay.
I hope that this sends a clear message to Mr Debnam that we're not going to take this lying down. We'll protest right through to the March election.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
On December the 28th, 1989, an earthquake brought Newcastle to its knees after what geologists called a random act of nature.
It was just an unfortunate coincidence that it was in a populated area.
Today, it's a view disputed by Dr. Christian Closer, a fresh-faced yet well-published geologist from America's Columbia University. In a recent paper he wrote, almost 200 years of coal mining was likely to blame for the 1989 tragedy because it decreased the stability of the Earth's crust.
The relationship between them is tenuous at best.
Professor Robert Melchers worked on the independent report into the cause of the earthquake.
The Earth's crust is continually moving, very, very, very slowly, of course, and it's flexing and it's stretching and it's contracting, and that is the normal driving force for earthquakes.
The former president of the Geoscience Council, Dr. David Denham, told us that there would have been more quakes since 1940 if coal mining was to blame. Questions have even been raised if Dr. Closer's motivation was to unravel the mystery of earthquakes or to gain momentum with environmentalists and increase his international profile with such a radical claim.
Nelson Bay attracts tens of thousands of tourists every year. Its close proximity to Sydney and Newcastle, as well as its pristine beaches, a major drawcard. Sadly, over the past few years, the influx of people, along with rowdy locals, has led to an increase in nighttime antisocial behaviour.
Particularly skateboards, property damage, both private and public property, drunkenness, that sort of thing, aggravation to pedestrians.
The region's businesses became so concerned last year they pulled their money to hire private security guards. This summer they've done it again, and apparently with great success.
Well, they patrol the streets. They're in uniform, of course. They look the part, which is pretty important, and they in fact do act as a deterrent.
2 years ago, Apex Park was the CBD's biggest problem area, with tourists frequently getting harassed by troublemakers. However, now with security guards in place, the park is virtually incident-free.
With her 3 masts towering 60 metres into the air, Athena, the goddess of the sea, slipped around Nobby's breakwater out of a sea mist this morning. At 90 metres long, the aluminium super yacht is just 2 years old and cleared a path through the usual harbour traffic as she headed for her berth. It's not till you get up close that you realise how big she is, capable of navigating the world's oceans in luxury, but too tall to fit under the Sydney Harbour Bridge. That's part of the reason she's in Newcastle for a scrub and polish. And is the wealthy owner aboard?
The clientele like to be fairly anonymous, and it's very much a need-to-know basis.
We obviously don't need to know. But as she arrived at Sensation Yachts Carrington Wharf, Small Business Minister David Campbell was there, announcing that the company had secured a payroll tax break that will save it hundreds of thousands of dollars in the next 5 years.
As a business is growing or establishing, there can be a reduction in payroll tax as a means of ensuring that there's that investment in a regional location.
Sensation Yachts is currently building a 70-metre fiberglass super yacht for an overseas client. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Hastily installed after a winless 7 rounds this season, it was then declared if Gary Van Egmond could lift the Jets into the finals, a new contract was his. There's no doubting his efforts since taking control, nor the interest rival clubs would now have. However, Newcastle want to avoid contract distractions at the risk of opening the door for others. It's not the same approach for players, namely for Matt Thompson, who's close to terms on a 3-year deal despite approaches from the Central Coast. Teammate Jade North is a different matter, with the Socceroo being chased by both Melbourne and Perth.
There's been a lot of interest around, definitely in Australia, but I'd like to try and get overseas if I can. It's my ultimate goal.
For Labano Haliti, it's his international future that remains undecided. Chased by his homeland Albania, Haliti is also in Australia's plans for the next Olympics and will attend an Olyroos camp next week, after which he hopes to make up his mind.
Family is a big influence on my career and my life, but end of the day it's going to be my choice and my decision.
In all, 5 Jets will be in Canberra next week for the camp, including Mark Bridge and goalkeeper Ben Kennedy.
Malaysian Fin Aziz says he's fitting out his yacht down under because of our top tradesmen, reasonable rates and a wealth of advice on all matters sailing. A Malaysian company has given the 43-year-old $2 million to mount his solo challenge. He plans to leave from Borneo in June and sail around the world back to Malaysia without stopping and without any outside help. But for the next couple of months, he's at the Noakes Boatyard, getting his 11-year-old Sydney 46 ready for the job.
Oh, it's going to mean a lot to me. Also, it's going to be my best achievement in my sailing career.
The record attempt is a way of promoting his country and inspiring a younger generation of Malaysian dinghy sailors to take up yachting.
That there is something for them when they finish their small boat sailing, so they can come and join us and be part of our team, and we will groom you to be just like me, go sailing solo.
Ulamulu will undergo sea trials off Newcastle next month.
After 8 days of competing in strong winds, sailors welcomed today's lighter conditions, which made for a slower start to the last day of the multi-hull nationals. But the 10-knot southerly didn't slow 3-times world champion Glenn Ashby, the Victorian surging ahead of the 32-strong fleet to win his class. Fellow Victorian Tim Kirkham was in hot pursuit for second, but was narrowly edged out by Scott Anderson. Ashby now bound for another stint on the international circuit.
I'm actually heading over next week to Miami for the Miami Olympic classes regatta over there on the Tornado catamaran. I sail with my sailing partner Darren Bundock.
The latter is already an Olympian and Ashby plans to do likewise in China, but beforehand are the World Formula 18 Championships in Queensland and the European Series in Mallorca. Both are warm-up events for Beijing.
We came back from Argentina from the World Championships about 3-4 weeks ago and had a win there, which was fantastic on the Tornado. So we're pretty much qualified for Australia to go to the Olympics in China.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
All available police flooded into Merewether about 8:30 this morning after reports that a young man was breaking into houses, all the more terrifying for several residents who were at home at the time. Uniformed officers first on the scene were backed up by detectives who searched several properties and, working with residents, managed to close in on the suspect. He was spotted in the backyard of a house in Curry Street and within seconds the fit young 23-year-old had been captured. Police expect to charge him with at least 4 separate break-ins at Merewether and Cooks Hill, where there's been a recent spike in robberies.
We're having an equal amount of daylight to nighttime robberies, break-and-enters. We've primarily noticed that the entry is primarily either through the front door or a front window, and that can be either a smashed window or a cut fly screen.
Meantime, detectives investigating the murder of Bar Beach man Gordon French last week say they're looking for a young blonde-haired man who was seen having an altercation with the victim moments before he was stabbed to death outside his Light Street unit. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It's being called a rental crisis, demand for Newcastle properties outstripping supply. According to the city's real estate agents, it's never been this bad, and over the next 2 weeks, trying to rent premises is about to get a whole lot harder.
Well, this time of the year is always the toughest time of the year because Newcastle Uni is a very popular university and we've got a huge influx of both overseas and interstate students coming into town.
Wayne Stewart says simply not enough people are buying investment properties, and with less than 1% of rentals currently vacant, competition amongst would-be tenants is fierce.
Well sought after properties in the better locations. We're getting 30 and 40 people at some of our properties. Just this morning on one property, one inspection yesterday, by 10 o'clock we had 18 applications.
Well, I'm a uni student and I've been looking for somewhere nice in this area for ages, months and months, and there's virtually nothing to choose from.
And it seems many renters are willing to do anything to secure a sought-after home.
And I didn't think it would happen, but people are actually making offers above what the property has been let at.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. It took just over a week for these Canary Island date palms which line Danga Park to go from healthy specimens to pretty sad-looking trees. While it's not yet known what caused their demise, Newcastle Council's arborist has a pretty good idea.
It carries all the symptoms of the dying lower fronds and the gradual dieback of fronds of a disease called Fusarium oxysporum or palm wilt disease.
Today, tests were being carried out to determine whether or not it is the incurable disease, which has wiped out hundreds of palms in Sydney's Centennial Park. Soil and mulch surrounding the palms as well as tree core samples will now be sent to a diagnostic testing unit at the Botanical Gardens in Sydney. If palm wilt disease is the culprit, every date palm in the city could become infected and die.
It can move in the water table, as far as we understand it from Sydney's research, and that means that it can move pretty much easily in sandy soils.
The test results should be known by next week. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Hunter Vineyards are one of the region's strongest drawcards and are currently providing a quick source of income for locals and travellers alike. Cooler than normal temperatures, coupled with the drought, mean some vineyards are already harvesting their crops.
The reason for the vintage being so early, of course, is that we haven't had a lot of rain.
Grape growers aren't concerned with the less than ideal weather conditions, saying it should still be a good season with plenty of interest in grape picking.
That backpacker market's been fantastic for us, and a lot of young Europeans who have actually picked grapes before, and they're happy to work for 4 or 5 weeks, and that gives them the next drinking and travelling money for the next 4 or 5 weeks.
It seems many people are willing to put in the long hours and what can be almost back-breaking work to earn some quick cash.
Just to get some money, just for a bit of experience. Good money, good work, good atmosphere.
I'm actually from Germany and I'm living with my boyfriend in Australia, so it's a bit hard to find a job around here, so I do this for a while.
If only conditions were as testing over the weekend as they were today.
Well, it's like the old surf adage, should have been here yesterday, well should have been here today.
That, reportedly, was the only complaint by National Surf Lifesaving officials in the wash-up of the opening 2 rounds of the Nutrigrain Series in Newcastle last weekend.
It's a natural amphitheatre, Newcastle Beach. The crowd, while it was a good strong crowd, they came in and out all day. There were people coming past all the time, stopping, observing.
Hunter Branch officials are putting a strong case to the national body to get the series back, and why wouldn't they, given the national exposure it brings?
We've already told them that we would express our interest in being Newcastle Beach being one of the venues, and hopefully if it continues on that we want to be one of the homes of it.
For that to happen, the Hunter will have to beat the Gold, Sunshine and Central Coasts, which are all likely to put their hands up too. A decision won't be made until the current series winds up in March, with Coolum and Coogee to host the remaining 3 rounds. Travelling around and surfing the world's best breaks apparently has its disadvantages. But one of the pluses, according to Travis Lynch, is it gives you a whole new appreciation of home.
I sort of miss, just the actual fact that we can get good waves, whereas, you live out of a suitcase for, most of the year and you're not getting rewarded with any waves.
Far from being disillusioned, the 22-year-old does concede he needs a break to prevent that from happening.
My hunger for good waves sort of, outweighed the fact that I wanted to compete, but I still definitely feel like I can compete and I want to.
And he will, in Australia anyway, competing at the local legs of the World Qualifying Series. In the meantime, he's literally getting on with the business of surfing, boosting his corporate base before returning to competition overseas.
I'm just going to be working with one of the top surf photographers, Bosco, and if we just get some good waves, some good photos, get some good video footage, then, that'll be good for my profile.
Clouds full of empty promises hovered over the Upper Hunter today, as searing heat added fuel to the ongoing drought. While water levels for Scone, Merriwa and Aberdeen are stable, Upper Hunter Shire Council could move Murrurundi onto severe level 4 restrictions within a fortnight.
To refill the storage dam at Murrurundi, we're probably talking more than 100 mil over a week or two, just to get the Pages River flowing again.
East to Singleton, and Council is expected to announce level 3 restrictions by February.
There'll be impacts on business, sporting, schools, really across the board. What will happen in that area is that we'll be seeking reductions of 20%.
With Glennies Creek Dam currently at 32% capacity, residents will soon face strict guidelines for water usage. Unlike Murrurundi residents, garden hoses will be permitted, but only for certain activities and at certain times of the day. For resident Ron Stokes, the restrictions couldn't have come at a worse time, having recently established the grounds of his historic Singleton property.
The present restrictions allow me to be as good as it is, but once the next level goes on, it'll deteriorate quite badly.
Singleton Shire Council will now consider major subsidies for water tanks to be included in the budget for the next financial year. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's the only major Newcastle beach not to have a kiosk or cafe. For the last 5 years, Dixon Park Surf Club has been trying to get permission from Newcastle Council for a much needed facility.
Frequently asked the patrol or the beach inspectors, where's the nearest shop or where can we go?
The surf club wants to demolish this building, which is on Crown land, and redevelop the site to lease out the facility.
Well, what we have planned is what we would term a contemporary beach kiosk, with some undercover seating and a servery.
But Newcastle City Council says nothing is stopping the club from opening a kiosk at any time, selling ice creams, drinks and the like. It believes the club is being too ambitious and should scale back the proposal, or otherwise if they want to knock down and rebuild a larger cafe, they must apply to council to rezone the land. But it all seems to come down to a breakdown in communication between the two parties, with club president Dave Ringland saying he's never been asked to make such an application. And while there's still no sign of a kiosk, the council's website tells a different story, including a kiosk in a list of facilities at Dixon Park. Little comfort to those actually needing a drink. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
During major disasters or emergency situations, the Salvation Army provides food and water for people affected. The Hunter branch of the Salvos is now far better equipped for the role following the restoration and fitting out of this catering van.
It means that we can feed 1,000 people anytime, in the daytime, the night time, not only the people who are dealing with the emergency but victims as well.
Work for the Dole participants have spent the last 6 months restoring the van, which was donated by the New South Wales Fire Brigades. They finished sprucing it up today, while Salvo's volunteers tried out the equipment inside.
This has given them opportunity to upgrade their skills and now to move on to something else. And that's what the Salvation Army is all about, working with the community and helping those who need help.
Used a few different hand tools, which I've never used before, so that was a plus.
There aren't that many jobs out there, but it gives you a chance to hone your skills up and maybe you will get a job out at the end of it.
All the Salvos need now is a vehicle big enough to tow the 4-tonne van. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Jets assembled for their official team photo this morning, and one of which midfielder Matt Thompson will feature in for another 3 years.
There's a bit of stability there, and like I said, I'm happy. I'm happy here, and a few of the boys I know that they want to hang around for a while, and I'm playing with my mates, so it's great.
The Newcastle club still has Jade North in the frame, even though the tough defender wants to try his luck overseas. With that said, North isn't concerning himself with talk of contracts, but righting past wrongs.
Perth have taken 6 points off us this year, so, we have to get 3 points back off them, and, for our season anyway.
I know the boys have still got a bit of a bad taste in their mouth from the last game that we played against them. A, obviously copying that goal very, very late, and B, we're probably only there a day prior, which wasn't the greatest preparation.
So the team will leave for Perth tomorrow ahead of Sunday's match. Captain Paul Ocon has again been ruled out because of a quadricep injury, with a view he'll return Friday week.
It's a long trip over to Perth and it's a short turnaround, so maybe just erring a little bit on the side of caution.
Stu Mashalik will miss the game through suspension, with Labano Haliti, Tim Brown and Adam Dapuzzo among those being considered to replace him. They call Bolwarra's Dennis Blunden fossil, and his daily routine is very much set in stone.
I've always said that racing or riding push bikes is like a drug. If I don't have a day or don't go training on a day, I prowl up and down inside the house. The wife goes off her brain because that's all I do. I just can't settle.
When you look back at his cycling career of nearly 55 years, Dennis never settled on the bike either, even though he says it's not all about finishing first.
To be at that level, the only thing you can really do is beat yourself or chase the clock.
Should cycling's national body give its blessing, he'll attempt to set the 1 hour world record in the 70-plus age group for the distance cycled around a velodrome. To do that, he'll need to better 36.7 kilometres over the hour. His aim is 42.
You've got your challenges and that's what you work on. That's the way I do it anyway.
What makes this attempt that more special, Dennis pretty much has no use of his left arm after a near-death cycling accident rendered it practically useless. That was 7 years ago.
When you get over 70 years of age, every day's a bonus as far as I'm concerned. But I don't, once again, I don't class my age as a problem. You know what I mean? Like I'm fit and healthy, all right, one day, all right, I'll fall off the twig. Well, that's the way it goes. But it's, I feel good. I've got no problems.
A normally busy Newcastle street was blocked off to traffic and city workers this morning as detectives and forensic police carried out investigations at the crime scene. A sniffer dog was also brought in to assist in the search for the attacker and for a knife. Police say just before 8 a.m, an altercation between the two men began in the foyer of Life Shapers Family Services, a Christian organisation. The argument then shifted outside onto Denison Street, where it quickly escalated.
It would appear that the offender has fatally stabbed the victim with a knife at this stage. Our inquiries indicate that that's what's happened outside the premises.
The victim, a 27-year-old from Mayfield, collapsed in this driveway and was rushed to the John Hunter Hospital in a critical condition, but died a short time later. Both men were visiting Life Church in Denison Street, which provides meals for the region's needy. They were known to staff and had used the soup kitchen before.
We have a number of witnesses that will be assisting us with our inquiries this morning. At this stage, though, the alleged offender has left the scene.
At 2:30 this afternoon, police located a 34-year-old Maitland man and arrested him. Police later discovering a knife in his backpack. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
33-year-old Kenneth John Penfold is charged with attempted murder and aggravated break and enter after butcher Dave Reed was shot twice and robbed at the house adjoining his Pacific Highway butcher shop on December 27. The Adamstown man had been employed to pack prawns at the shop before Christmas, but according to facts tendered to Belmont Court today, Penfold was sacked on Christmas Eve for stealing money from the cash register. It's alleged he returned 3 days later with two other men. The trio armed with a machete and a sawn-off shotgun. The police facts say that when the group arrived at Mr Reid's door at 3:30 in the morning, he yelled, "Oh, F, Kenny's here." Moments later, the butcher was shot and his Christmas takings of $25,000 in cash were stolen. Mr Reid remains in hospital recovering from his gunshot wounds, while the two other men involved are still at large. Police allege that Penfold was also involved in the robbery of another former employer, Hills Transport, here at Sandgate. On that occasion in November, a consignment of plasma TVs, laptop computers and mobile phones was stolen. Penfold was refused bail and will face Newcastle Court in a fortnight. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The quick action of neighbours who called 000 had fire brigades on the scene within a matter of minutes, but they found the house in Carisbrook Avenue totally involved by fire.
It took hold pretty quickly and the windows started to bust out and it was right into it. It doesn't take long.
The Alupis family have lived here for 25 years. Their children had grown up in the home, but when the owners returned early this afternoon, to their absolute horror, their house was a smouldering wreck gutted by the outbreak, leaving them unable to retrieve precious items such as photographs.
The house has suffered severe damage on the upper floor. Downstairs has suffered quite a bit of damage from water and heat.
Fortunately, no one was at home at the time. Neighbours say they heard two loud bangs which alerted them to the fire.
The lady down the street was dialling 000 and Tom was racing out with a garden hose and the place just went up. Simple as that.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
From a community point of view, this structure is not cheap. It's very, very expensive to replace the material that covers this porta mod.
Instead of just giving a snapshot of women's health, the University of Newcastle's study has followed the weight trends of a group of 30,000 women over the past 10 years.
When we started, about 20% of women in their 20s were either overweight or obese, and now we're finding about 30% are overweight or obese, which is of concern. But of even more concern is the fact that they're continuing to gain weight, and the rate that they're gaining weight is increasing every time we survey them.
The study has revealed the weight gains come with some alarming side effects.
Heart disease and hypertension and diabetes, also associated with arthritis because you're putting stress on your joints.
While it didn't surprise researchers to discover these health concerns in women over the age of 50, the trends in women in their 30s are concerning.
We're starting to see that effect on women's health even as young as 30, when you shouldn't be having those sorts of problems.
The study claims maintaining an even, consistent weight is the solution to avoiding chronic diseases. A daily 30-minute exercise regime and not overeating is also recommended. Christy Carter, NBN News. Hunter Surf Life Saving's brand new Ties Hill headquarters may be a long way from the beach, but it has its benefits.
All of our electronic gear used to rust and seize up on the beach. It was great to be there, but these offices now will be able to run everything. We'll have a lot less maintenance costs with it.
Once complete, the purpose-built $750,000 facility will be a hive of activity.
We train first aid, our life support systems, we teach defib, basic resuscitation. We'll be able to do all our theory work for our bronze medallion training, for our IRB training, our jet ski training. Everything will be under the one roof.
A Newcastle developer had originally proposed to include the Hunter SLSA headquarters in his proposed redevelopment of the dilapidated surf house, but those plans have been scrapped.
It wasn't big enough in its current formation. There's a lot of smaller rooms which weren't conducive to holding our meetings.
Hunter Surf Lifesaving has added $240,000 of its own money to a $311,000 federal grant and $100,000 in sponsorship from Newcastle-based companies. The state government is yet to come good on its $41,000 promise, and in a pun-loaded challenge, federal member for Patterson, Bob Baldwin, says the state government should do better.
Morris Yemma has to dig deep into his budgie smugglers and get out another $241,000 to match the federal funding.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
It was the perfect illustration of why FIFA boss Sepp Blatter wants to implement technology to take away the guesswork of calls like this. And Central Coast Mariners coach Laurie McKenna agrees.
We've got modern technology, why not use it? Because that chance could have cost us a final spot.
To be fair, wayward shooting was at the core of the Mariners' woes against New Zealand last night. Needing a win to stay in a realistic hunt for successive finals appearances, there was just no way the ball was going to find the back of the net, despite a glut of chances. The Kiwis just hit each other. Former Jet Richie Johnson back amongst the stars after this. The lump said it all, but the Curry boy wasn't about to sit this one out. The Mariners wished he had. Johnson scrambling back to save that shot from Stu Petrie, which home fans and players alike thought had crossed the line. Still, they had the chance to seal it late, but 0-0 it remained, making it near impossible for the Coast to feature in the Final Four. You don't get much change from $7,000 for top-of-the-line mountain bikes like these, so it's no wonder they get some TLC before racing. Once on track, they don't hold back, but these guys made sure today's practice was more about preservation, with Sunday the day they want to fire on a testing Black Hill track.
It's a little bit loose, so it's going to give the mountain bikers a bit of an advantage over the BMXers who like it nice and smooth and nice and flowing.
The elite men will also have to contend with a world champion for Sunday's racing, who just happens to be a woman.
Oh, Jill Kittner's no slouch, you know. All the boys are going to be there to beat her, but she's a hard young lady to beat. I don't mean anything badly towards the young ladies, but she would give them a bit of a hiding, so yeah, she'll get in there and mix it up with us.
It'll be interesting to see just how she goes against Australia's elite male riders who go at this style of racing like a bull at a gate. One thing's for sure, none of the men want to get beaten by her. They might not have that choice, though, on Sunday.
The siege began this morning when detectives arrived at this Ridley Street house to question a 35-year-old man about a home invasion at Holmesville earlier this week.
The inquiry is in relation to the stabbing of Finlay Carney at Holmesville on the 10th of January. As a result of the observations, a man who police believe could assist with the inquiries was identified as being at the premises, and as a result of many varying factors, a siege was put in place to arrest the man.
Unsure as to whether the man was armed with a weapon, roads around the house were closed off and neighbours were told to stay inside their homes. But after more than 4 hours of waiting, for some the curiosity got too much. Eventually, police negotiators talked the 35-year-old out of the house. He was arrested and taken to Belmont Police Station for questioning over the Holmesville incident. Christy Carter, NBN News. Sweet, juicy Semillon grapes cut straight from the vine and today the first to be crushed at Oakvale Winery in the Hunter Valley. The harvest is 2 weeks ahead of last year's.
So far the grapes are looking fantastic. They're early. I think that's all due to the hot spring that we had. Everything took off very quickly through flowering or bud bursts from the outset.
The winemaker says the secret to Oakvale's award-winning wines is the quality of the grapes used.
It's a combination of things, mostly flavour, but technically, analytically, they're spot on. The sugar levels are right, the acid levels are high, and yeah, flavours are good.
But the drought has taken its toll. While quality is good, quantity is down.
We're only slightly down, but I believe quite a few vineyards are quite low, and I think that's all due to the drought, the hot, dry conditions, and probably following on from last season. The dry conditions haven't really help the vines to produce a bigger crop this year.
Today's crush is expected to fill around 5,040 bottles of Oakvale Semillon. Christy Carter, NBN News.
Queensland's finals hopes hinged on a good result against the minor premiers on their home ground, but they got the start they were after. A bit of a league journeyman this season, Damien Morris scoring his first goal for Queensland as they roared into life. After dominating all season, the victory's last few weeks has hardly been eye-catching stuff, but they found an equaliser in the second half. The goal should have been enough for Melbourne, who never needed the win. A draw, though, wasn't going to help Queensland much, and in a desperate finish, they snatched a winner through young star Dario Vidicic. Chased by European clubs, his price tag may have just gone up a notch. His club did on the ladder, moving into third with that effort, but both Adelaide and Newcastle can do likewise in their respective matches tomorrow night.
Market Street wasn't exactly bustling with activity this morning. Its rows of shops all but deserted. It's something Newcastle City Council is hoping to change by reintroducing markets into Market Street, a move it seems most would welcome.
Should be. Because they were very, very successful, I always thought.
It's a bit dead at the moment, eh? There's not many people. If we had markets and that, there'd be more people in, more money in that.
Yeah, they would probably appeal to some people, but to me there was too much of repetitive, same sort of thing all the time.
Council is calling on expressions of interest from anyone or any group who would be interested in running markets, even if it's a one-off event.
It doesn't have to run the way that the operators chose to run it before, because it's not necessarily going to be a commercial operation in terms of people investing and having to get their money back.
Submissions can be made until February 27. Madeline Bond, NBN News. This computer-generated imagery shows what tonight's sky should look like above Maitland. At around 8:20 p.m, Comet McNaught, which was discovered by New South Wales-based astronomer Robert McNaught in August last year, will become visible in the southern hemisphere. It's the brightest comet to pass Earth in at least 40 years, and incredibly will remain visible during daytime for at least the next few days.
I've never seen one in daylight. I've never heard of one that we can see in daylight. I've read about them, but I've never heard of one in my lifetime.
While astronomers know the comet first appeared in the northern hemisphere 2 weeks ago, they have no idea how long it will remain visible in our skies.
Comets and cats are very much alike. They both have tails and they do exactly what they want.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A cross between mountain bike and BMX styles of racing, it was a famous crossover that highlighted today's action in the National Series. American World Champion Jill Kittner racing and winning her first ever race against elite male competition.
That was like winning worlds for me. I was so happy. It means so much to me, and these guys, they don't care, but it means so much to me.
It saw her start in the elimination finals, but how quickly things can change in this sport. A mechanical failure, ending her tilt at the men's title, but she still backed up for the women's.
I don't know, whatever, who cares? Just good practice. It doesn't mean that much to me.
It's not like the rest of the men had it easy either. Newcastle's best chance, Adam Smithson, was bumped out in the quarters as well. We'll take a closer look at all the thrills and spills of this event again tomorrow night.